Have you ever heard of a friendship between a fairy and a witch? If not, then let me introduce you to two extraordinary characters. First, we have Rashmi, a radiant fairy who calls the magical realm of fairyland her home. She is as vivacious and charming as the shimmering stars that twinkle in the night sky. Not too far from fairyland, in the eerie shadows of the neighboring witch city, resides our second character. She's a witch named Bijli, the youngest of her kind. Though she might have a daunting exterior, don't let that fool you. Bijli is known for her wit, and is far more sensible than her age might suggest. Now, you must be wondering how these two, from such contrasting worlds, could ever cross paths. Well, it happened during a fierce battle that erupted between the fairies and witches, a conflict as old as time itself. The clash was intense, with both sides suffering severe injuries. The sight of such hostility deeply troubled Bijli. She yearned for an end to this ceaseless feud, a longing for peace that seemed almost impossible. But as they say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And so Bijli, despite her tender age and frightening surroundings, decided not to lose hope. Meanwhile, Rashmi, with her heart as brave and pure as her enchanting fairyland, was also caught in the midst of this terrifying battle. Little did she know, her life was about to take an unexpected turn, and so their paths crossed for the first time, setting the stage for an unlikely friendship. But will they be able to overcome their differences and the age-old animosity between their races? Well, dear listeners, that's a tale for another time. Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. In the mystical world of fairies and witches, Rashmi, a fairy, found herself in a perilous situation. She was out exploring, away from the safety of her fairy realm. Overwhelmed by the beauty of the surroundings, she lost track of her path and inadvertently stepped into a river. The current was strong, and Rashmi found herself struggling to stay afloat. She cried out for help, her voice echoing through the otherwise serene landscape. Meanwhile, Bijli, the youngest witch from the nearby witch city, was passing by. Hearing the desperate cries, she rushed to the riverbank. Recognizing Rashmi as a fairy, Bijli was torn. Years of animosity between the fairies and witches had seeded deep resentment in her heart. Her initial instinct was to turn away, to leave Rashmi to her fate. After all, weren't all fairies the enemy? But as she started to walk away, she looked back and saw Rashmi still struggling, her cries growing weaker. Something tugged at Bijli's heart. Despite the deep-seated animosity, she couldn't ignore the plea for help. She realized that in that moment, Rashmi was not a fairy, not an enemy, but a fellow being in distress. Summoning a magical rope with her powers, Bijli threw it towards Rashmi. "Grab the rope!" she shouted. Rashmi, exhausted but determined, managed to grasp the rope. With Bijli's help, she was pulled to the safety of the riverbank. As Rashmi thanked Bijli, she extended an offer of friendship. But Bijli, still conflicted, refused and walked away. However, despite the rejection, Rashmi remained hopeful that one day, Bijli would accept her hand of friendship. And in that moment, a seed of friendship was sown. Not all friendships start smoothly. And this was certainly the case for Rashmi and Bijli. After being saved from the river, Rashmi, with a heart full of gratitude, extended her hand in friendship towards Bijli. But Bijli, clouded with the prejudices of the past, rejected it outright. "Fairies," she said, "are always fighting, always causing trouble. I don't want to be friends with someone like that." Her words were sharp, cutting through the hopeful atmosphere like a cold winter breeze. Rashmi was taken aback, but she didn't let this setback dampen her spirits. "If you ever change your mind," she said, her voice steady and strong, "I'll be here, waiting." And with that, she walked away, leaving Bijli alone with her thoughts. The rejection stung, of course, but Rashmi was not one to give up so easily. Patience can often lead to wonderful things. Once upon a time, in a land where fairies and witches lived side by side, a curious friendship was about to bloom. Every day, Rashmi, a fairy with a heart full of hope, would journey to the river, the very place where she almost lost her life, saved by none other than Bijli, the youngest witch of the neighboring witch city. Day after day, Rashmi waited by the river, her heart filled with hope and her eyes scanning the horizon for a sign of Bijli. She was determined to show the little witch that not all fairies were enemies, that friendship could exist even between the most unlikely of companions. Her belief was stronger than the rushing current of the river, as steadfast as the mountains that watched over them. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Yet, Rashmi's determination did not waver. Every day she waited by the river, her hope never dwindling. She believed in the possibility of friendship, in the power of kindness to bridge the gap between two worlds that have been at odds for centuries. And then, one day, her patience bore fruit. B-roll change Bijli, moved by Rashmi's relentless persistence, finally appeared by the river. Her eyes met Rashmi's, and in that moment, a connection was forged. It was a connection that transcended the enmity between their worlds, a bond that was built on the foundation of a shared experience, a saved life, and a persistent hope for a better future. Bijli extended her hand towards Rashmi, a silent acceptance of the friendship that the fairy had been offering all this while. Rashmi's heart swelled with joy as she took Bijli's hand, their fingers intertwining in a symbol of their newfound friendship. And so, their friendship finally began. B-roll change. Their story was a testament to the power of patience and persistence, a tale of an unlikely friendship that bloomed amidst a world filled with enmity and strife. A tale that proved that indeed, patience can often lead to wonderful things. True friendship often leads to great things. With a bond of friendship now connecting them, Rashmi the fairy and Bijli the witch found themselves contemplating an ambitious idea. They yearned to bridge the chasm that had divided their two races for centuries. Gradually, an audacious plan began to take shape in their minds. They would convince their respective communities that friendship between a fairy and a witch was not only possible, but also beneficial. They believed that unity could bring about a golden era of peace and prosperity, replacing the age-old animosity that had only led to destruction and despair. Their plan was simple, yet challenging. They would share their experiences, their journey of friendship, with their people. They would tell them about their unlikely encounter, about the courage that Bijli showed when she saved Rashmi from the swirling river, about the weight and the rejection, and how their friendship had blossomed despite all odds. They would explain how their friendship had helped them see beyond the stereotypes and prejudices, how it had opened their eyes to the goodness in each other. They hoped their story would inspire others to look past their differences, to see the potential for friendship, for unity. But they knew it wouldn't be easy. Centuries of enmity had left deep scars, and old beliefs were hard to change. They knew there would be resistance, skepticism, possibly even hostility. Yet, they were undeterred. They were ready to face the challenges, ready to fight for their cause. They believed in the power of friendship, in the possibility of change. And they were determined to do whatever it took to unite their worlds. With a sense of purpose fueling their courage, Rashmi and Bijli prepared to embark on their mission. They knew the journey would be long and arduous, but they also knew it would be worth it. And so they embarked on their mission, determined to bring peace. Change is never easy, but it is always possible. So, Rashmi and Bijli found out firsthand. They faced opposition from their own people, but they were not deterred. They were steadfast, fueled by the belief that they could bring about a new era of friendship and peace between their worlds. Rashmi, the fairy, took it upon herself to share their story with her kin in the fairy realm. She spoke of Bijli, the witch, who had saved her life, risking her own in the process. She spoke of their shared laughter, their shared dreams, and how, in spite of their different worlds, they had found a common ground. She asked her people to look beyond the centuries-old enmity and see the witches as they were, not so different from them after all. In the witch city, Bijli echoed Rashmi's sentiments. She told her people about Rashmi, the fairy who had shown her kindness and friendship when she had expected none. She shared tales of their time together, of the fairy's gentle nature and the peace they had found in each other's company. She implored her people to reconsider their views about the fairies, to let go of the hatred that had been passed down generations, and to give friendship a chance. Their words met with resistance, of course. There were those who scoffed, who ridiculed, who refused to listen. But there were also those who paused, who considered, who began to question the age-old feud, and little by little, minds started to change. Their journey was far from over. They still had a long way to go, but every journey begins with a single step, and they had taken theirs. They had sown the seeds of change, and though they knew it would take time, they were hopeful. They knew they had to keep going, keep talking, keep sharing, and keep believing. For their determination was beginning to make a difference. Sometimes it's the most unlikely friendships that have the biggest impact. The friendship between Rashmi, the fairy, and Bijli, the young witch, was blossoming. It was a bond that was as unexpected as it was beautiful. It was a friendship that was starting to challenge age-old beliefs and prejudices. Just as the petals of a flower unfold to reveal its beauty, the friendship between Rashmi and Bijli was unfolding in front of everyone's eyes. It was a friendship that was growing stronger with each passing day, as the two of them spent more time together, learning about each other and their worlds. Their friendship was a testament to the fact that even the most different individuals could find common ground and build a bond of love and respect. It was a friendship that was slowly but surely starting to influence the fairies and the witches, making them reconsider their age-old hostility. Rashmi and Bijli were showing their people that they could coexist peacefully. They were showing them that they were not so different after all. They were showing them that they could learn from each other, that they could grow together. The fairies and the witches were watching this friendship unfold. They were watching Rashmi and Bijli laugh together, share stories, and support each other. They were watching a friendship that was changing their worlds. This friendship was not just a bond between two individuals. It was a bridge between two worlds. It was a beacon of hope in a sea of hostility. It was a sign that change was possible, that peace was possible. Against all odds, Rashmi and Bijli had started to bridge the gap between their worlds. They were showing everyone that friendship knows no boundaries, that it can cross even the deepest chasms of hostility. They were showing everyone the power of friendship, the power of love, and the power of understanding. Against all odds, Rashmi and Bijli had started to bridge the gap between their worlds. Every story has a lesson to teach. Our tale today is no different. It carries lessons of peace, understanding, and the power of unlikely friendships. We've journeyed alongside Rashmi, the fairy from Fairyland, and Bijli, the youngest witch from the Witch City. Despite their worlds being at odds, their paths crossed, and they found a bond in the most unexpected circumstances. Their story began with a chance encounter, followed by a life-saving act that broke the barriers of their long-standing rivalry. Bijli's act of saving Rashmi from the treacherous currents of the Cloud River was not just a moment of heroism, but a spark that ignited a connection between two unlikely friends. But as in any story, there were trials to overcome. Rashmi's offer of friendship was initially met with reluctance and rejection by Bijli, symbolizing the deep-seated mistrust and animosity between their worlds. Yet, Rashmi's patience and persistent attempts at friendship slowly wore down Bijli's resistance. The tale of Rashmi and Bijli teaches us that peace and understanding are not immediate, but are achieved through patience, persistence, and the willingness to see beyond differences. It demonstrates that friendships can form in the most unlikely places, and can be the catalyst for change and healing. Their mission to bridge the gap between Fairyland and Witch City was not an easy one. It was met with resistance, doubt, and even ridicule from their respective worlds. But the seeds of change they sowed slowly began to take root, blooming into a friendship that transcended their differences and challenged the age-old enmity between their worlds. And so, we learn that even the most unlikely friendships can bring about the greatest changes. The friendship between Rashmi and Bijli was not just a bond between two individuals, but a beacon of hope for their worlds. It showed that if we look beyond our differences and work towards understanding, we can foster peace and harmony where there was once conflict and discord.